That emphasis on discipline would also serve as an ideological example for history's most famous fighting machine, the Roman gladiator.
A gladiator was a highly skilled, very well-trained risker of death in a spectacular environment.
Gladiators were mostly slaves, criminals, or prisoners of war. They were trained for combat in special privately owned schools.
The gladiatorial schools were, in some sense, prisons, in some sense, training schools. The gladiators lived in the school, and they didn't go outside the school. So there's sort of self-enclosed areas where you'd have kitchens, you'd have bath facilities, you'd have training facilities. And the training area for a gladiatorial school was usually an arena.
Gladiators trained under the strict supervision of expert combat instructors, known as doctores.
The word doctor in Latin simply means one who is learned. And there were doctores in the gladiatorial school who were particularly learned in a certain kind of combat, a certain armature. And they were primarily responsible for the training of individual gladiators in a specific armature.
Gladiators trained with weighted shields to gain strength. In combat, they wore a visored helmet and carried a net or perhaps a trident. But their main weapon was a sword.
One of the clearest elements about the training is the presence of a big stake in the ground, sort of a practice human, big log maybe around 6 feet above the ground, that was there basically for people to attack. So people would get on their armature and they go attack the log. And on the basis of the marks left on the log, their trainers could tell where they're letting their guard down, where they need to watch, where they need to keep their eyes. So not unlike perhaps training for football today, whamming against something is a key part of the training of a gladiator, too.
The intense training of both the gladiator and Roman soldier would set the standard by which future armies would be measured. Next, knighthood and teaching the art of killing during the Middle Ages.
When I use the body contact with somebody, I hit his testicles with my right foot. I'm gonna knock you down to the ground and leave you with no defense, so I can hurt you.
During his class, John Clements explains one of the manual's violently effective takedown techniques.
Here, stopping the energy, coming up. Again, he can't cut me, please. Try and slice. He's not going anywhere. My body, my leverage, I have balance, and my weapon is still free to cut him, or to hit him, or to disarm him with somebody. Thank you.
The underlying theme in all of this is brutality and effectiveness. You weren't playing, you weren't putting on a show, you were trying to kill someone and stay alive. And anything goes under those conditions. And the manuals tell this pretty clearly.
In the Far East, martial arts of a different kind were developing along more spiritual lines. For the samurai, a mental state approaching meditation was essential in combat training. A Japanese samurai was a warrior for hire, dedicated to protecting the feudal assets of his master with unswerving loyalty and dedication.
Typical samurai would probably train 6 or 8 hours a day at that time. And of course they trained with wooden swords, which are called bokens. They trained with real swords.
Samurais would practice individual movements with their razor-sharp katana or sword for hours and days at a time. Like the gladiators and knights, the samurai also trained under the guidance of teachers, or masters. Their incredible repetition also emphasized mental control and the ability to attain an almost zen-like state of calmness during battle.
Samurai's training had to be the most realistic possible, almost more strict and harsher than a real live situation in combat, because the more they can make it real and face life and death in their training, when they really face life or death in an actual match or duel or on the battlefield, it would be very comfortable to them. It's easy to shoot at targets when we have somebody else that's shooting back at you, or a boxer that's just hitting a heavy bag when somebody isn't hitting you back. It adds a completely different level to that.